So a couple of weeks ago, I did an oopsie, and that is because for some reason I thought this episode was the finale, but I'm glad I was wrong. I do apologize if anyone got confused by that. I don't know why that was in my head. I really don't understand. But again, I was glad because I felt like Stargirl needed a couple more episodes to close its season, and lo and behold, we had 2 more episodes from last episode. So here we are with episode 12, The Last Will and Testament of Sylvester Pemberton, and yeah, there's a twist at the end, of which I'm sure you're all aware of, that did you see coming? I mean, I don't know how to feel about it. Like, Sylvester was never here the whole time. And I have to say, what I like about what Jordan Marquand has achieved here is quite the villainous team up. And fans were right as well about Dragon King. I didn't actually think that one was necessarily going to pan out. I thought they did a very good job at more or less straying a lot of us away from thinking Dragon King was still alive, because that was on the table, if you guys remember, when we were thinking who is the murderer gonna be. And then when it turned out to be, okay, is it the Ultra-Humanite? But it was like, okay, that gorilla wouldn't fit in that robed figure, mystery figure that we saw. Then that turned out to be the one and only Jordan Marquand Icicle. Fantastic. Then it's like, okay, they're working together. Jordan's trying to deceive everyone, including his whole family, that he's back to help and that he's going to try and hunt down the Ultra-Humanite. But then it turns out there's even more to it. So the Ultra-Humanite is actually in Sylvester's body, and of course the person in what was the Ultra-Humanite's body of choice, the gorilla, was indeed Dr. Ito, and that is indeed Dragon King. Give this video a like, would really appreciate that. Thank you so much to those of you who do that. It helps this channel grow. It feeds that YouTube algorithm, so honestly, appreciate you if you hit that like button. So at the beginning, we saw a bit of a flashback to get some of that context behind the whole Dolores Winters situation, and this revealed Dragon King. And sure, like you may have thought at the beginning, okay, well, if they're showing Dragon King in this flashback, or at least right before he was Dragon King, Dr. Ito had started that process, then maybe he was going to pop up in present day. But let me know if you thought or gauged the fact that he was going to actually already be in the show already, and obviously that being in the gorilla form. I also like how there was a little reference when they were gearing up to the whole I want my brain in a gorilla now, the JSA are getting too close, they're picking up on my trail. There was a little reference to My Greatest Adventure, which is the Doom Patrol comic series. And then after this flashback, we kind of have a bit of an aftermath of what happened recently. Of course, we have the fallout from the very end of last episode with Sylvester, which it feels weird to say because it's not Sylvester, but I'll say it for the sake of it for the meantime, really wanting to take the fight to Icicle. And what I am wondering here, as I'm looking at my bullet points of, you know, we go to the Rip City gym with Artemis there, she wants to kill Jordan Marquand. What I'm wondering is, since we know Sylvester here is the Ultra-Humanite, what was this scene about for them? Do you think that Jordan Marquand sent the Ultra-Humanite there in Sylvester form to just say that he's got it handled and he's going to kill Icicle for Artemis because they don't want Artemis in it? I don't think Jordan Marquand's that compassionate, because you could argue that maybe even though he's killed the Crocs, he doesn't want anything to happen to Artemis, so he sent Sylvester there to kind of throw her off. But then again, they just might not want Artemis to team up with the JSA in order to take them down, and maybe they could see Artemis in combination and in this collaborated kind of fight that we're obviously going to get next episode to be that much more of a problem. Meanwhile with Rick, he manages to take the hourglass off, immediately starts getting withdrawal effects. It's almost like he's going to the red. If you've been watching Titans, you'll know exactly what I mean. And we got very small doses of this. It was this and then just much later on towards the end of this episode, and this was one of the main reasons in the previous review I did as to why I thought we need 2 more episodes, when I initially thought that this episode would have been the finale, because it felt like, okay, Rick's mega addicted and the series is going to end soon, so what's going to happen? And I did expect a bit more to happen here, although I'm guessing that even though he's not off the hourglass addiction right now, even at the end when they're offering him support, I guess he might just continue to fight in the next episode and then deal with it afterwards, which could be obviously a bit of a problem, because even though he's wanting to get himself fixed, if he's still going into that fight next week in the finale, with the same kind of influences of this addiction, then he could be a bit of a problem. And if he takes it off before then, I do feel like it would be rushed if they just did it towards the end of this episode off screen, and he's kind of put the limiter back in, they've solved that problem, and his withdrawal effects are all gone. I'd like to think they're not going to do that, so they're probably just going to use his power in the meantime and just hope it works out, and then nurse him to health afterwards. And again, as I look through my bullet points, I just think to myself, what are these scenes about? So when they're at the pit stop with Beth and Yolanda and Sylvester, and he's giving that whole speech about don't let my legacy die, or don't let their legacies die, the JSA, and he talks about handing on the mantle of the Flash, Mr. Terrific, Dr. Fate, the Spectre. The reason why I think he's saying this is because of his insanity, I guess. I think in a similar way to what was learned at the ending part of the episode in that speech or conversation to Pat as he was burying him alive. The Ultra-Humanite can get way too into the role. So even though you would have thought that, I guess, if Icicle's plan was successful with the Ultra-Humanite posing as Pat, Jordan gets his vengeance and I guess he kills the JSA, it would seem redundant to say this, but I guess it's just because he's so locked into the Sylvester mode that he's just like, yes, carry on the JSA mantles, don't let their legacies die. Some of them didn't have kids like me. Find people after this. So I don't think that would have really happened if the villains won at the end of this season. Obviously, Jordan probably would have murdered every single last one of them, including Mike. But it just goes to show how insane the Ultra-Humanite is, which is something I didn't really appreciate properly, I think. But you go back and, someone like me who's taken bullet points for this review, you see all of these scenes that seem redundant if he's really a villain, but then you realize it's like, damn, he's just playing the role. Now, later on, when Sylvester is trying to look for the staff and Courtney took it, and we got that massive row. This is when Courtney overheard it. We got a really nice moment. This has been like seasons in the making, and it's not like it wasn't really established in the way before, but I don't think it's been outright spoken, and that is that she's realizing that Pat is her father. Like, she thought Sylvester could have been for a period of time, but he is the hero, Pat, that is. And in this moment, this is something, I don't know how I feel about it. So Sylvester takes the staff, right? And it overrides Courtney. Now, I think with the lines that they said here, that had something to do with the way it worked. Sylvester said, you may have swayed the staff to yourself before, but deep down, you know it belongs to me. You're not worthy of it. So maybe she's got to get the staff back from the Ultra-Humanite next episode, because now she's going to know that Sylvester isn't Sylvester and it's the Ultra-Humanite. But on a deeper level, I think there is some logic that they're trying to introduce here, in that if Courtney deep down doesn't really believe that the staff is by default hers and she thought it was Starman, that's probably some mojo to how it works, and thus obviously when she finds out, she's just going to get it straight back. But I think the larger problem I have, and I don't think they go into enough explanation here, is obviously later on, just jumping to it whilst we're on the subject, that even after when it's revealed to Cosmo that, okay, this isn't Sylvester, it's the Ultra-Humanite, he's still like in the grasp of Sylvester, and they're trying to make it out like, you helped me bond with the staff, like, and once I did that, yada yada yada. And I just thought, like, surely you can sense that it's not Sylvester. I thought that the staff had a connection that was more than skin deep, so to speak, or surface level. And if that's the case, then with quite literally a different brain and cerebral thinking and everything like that, I feel like it kind of undoes some of the mysticism that we've got with the staff so far. Again, I'm not trying to go ham on this. It's just with what we've been introduced, even with the staff, even though it's been ambiguous, it's been vague, I feel like it takes away something when the staff does now appear to be fooled on surface level things. Again, I thought because the staff chose me and I chose you, like that whole thing, right? I thought it did it based on something within. But I guess if the Ultra-Humanite just being in the flesh suit of someone else can deceive the staff and is even staying with him for the time being, then yeah, I think that rubs me the wrong way just a little bit. Even though it's obvious that Courtney, now knowing that the staff doesn't belong to Sylvester because Sylvester's brain died a long time ago, then she's got to get it back. Alright, so with Mike and Jakeem, they hang out with Cindy this episode. We can't forget that they're a team now. And this all gets to the point of where Jakeem wishes that the Thunderbolt would take them to the lab that they're looking for, which they're very lucky this panned out, because that was a very, very vague wish, and I feel like it goes against quite a lot of, as Mike pointed out, like, how is this going to work? But it kind of low-key did. It literally did work this time. They found the Dragon King logo, they went to the lab, they find a body, and it is none other than Dragon King's with his brain missing. So I guess, like, I want some backstory there, like, who recovered Dragon King's body, who took the brain out, was it the Ultra-Humanite in gorilla mode at the time? If that's the case, and as we know, Dragon King's brain got put into the gorilla form, then who did that? Because the Ultra-Humanite was presently in the gorilla form. So do you see what I mean? I feel like there needs to be like a third party. I guess you could argue that it was Icicle when he came about, but he was kind of out of action for a long time. You know, as he said, not even sentient for a period of time. And this was one of the big twists. So this is where the Ultra-Humanite came round the corner. By this point, you can put it all together because the brain's missing. And I was quite happy with this reveal. It makes sense why the Ultra-Humanite, when we first got introduced to him, said, you know, I'm going to kill every single one of them. And I knew there was context as we went over back then that they were going to add, and we eventually got, and how the JSA used to go up against him and he will have a grudge. But now it makes even more sense, right? Because the JSA in Season 1 completely foiled Dragon King's plans. So this all makes sense. And again, what I really like about this is that it has been, and they've kept it under quite a good lock and key, an organic return of the ISA, albeit like a new-esque team-up in a certain way with the actual Ultra-Humanite being in Sylvester's body. But, you know, Icicle, Dr. Ito / Dragon King back in the form of a freaking gorilla. It's all really cool. But one thing I am left wondering is, how is Cindy going to get cured? It's not like they got really anything out of this lab. You know, I doubt Dr. Ito, before eventually they get defeated next episode, is going to be like, okay, Cindy, fine, we've been defeated. This is how you undo it. You know, is he really going to give that chance? Is Stargirl going to give, like, it's not really a redemption, but I'd be very surprised. But maybe not surprised if they actually do get Dr. Ito being like, fine, like, you were my greatest experiment, but if you really want to undo this, this is how you do it. And then he dies. I don't know about that. I really hope they don't do that. I hope it's just something else. In the meantime, we have Pat go to the Markent's house with a freaking flamethrower, meets up with Sylvester there. Really, the Ultra-Humanite gets tapped over the head, and this is when Icicle walks in and is like, oh, damn. Meanwhile, with Rick turning up to Courtney's house, this is where the JSA are somewhat learning that something isn't right. They don't have all the pieces of the puzzle put together, but Rick does mention that Sylvester told him about the limiter and that he could remove it. To be fair, though, you know, even though Beth says that he knew about the limiter, I've been reading up about your father, and your father went through a similar thing once, and the JSA helped him through it. And Courtney mentions, well, Sylvester would know the dangers of the limiter, and Starman was there. If he knew about what it would do to Rick, then why would he tell him to remove the limiter? But again, I could be wrong, but I do remember, like, that scene, and I do remember quite vividly Starman, of whom was the Ultra-Humanite at the time, told Rick that your dad probably put that in there for a reason. It could be dangerous and whatnot. I don't think he strictly said, yeah, remove it. So I feel like those scenes could have been organized a bit better, because this is the very thing that makes Courtney and everyone think, okay, why would Starman do that if he knew what was going to happen to Rick? Something ain't right. This is the thing where they're almost about to put it together, right? Sure, Sylvester gave Rick the idea, but he did basically advise him that there was probably a very good reason that our man put that limiter in there, and it was all then down to Rick for removing it. So I don't know if that's such a believable gotcha moment for the JSA in this moment to connect that together. But I get why they might have been so careful in that scene back then, because I feel like if they portrayed it with Sylvester saying, yeah, Rick, take out the limiter, go on, man, do it, then it would have been obvious to us as an audience that why would Sylvester do that? Maybe we would have clued in a lot earlier that something wasn't right. And then, guys, the very end of the episode, we have Pat getting buried alive, and we have that monologue from Starman, more or less recapping the events of everything. Sometimes that stuff in shows and movies, I felt like this could have been shortened a little bit, even though I really enjoyed it. But you know, that those things where they tell the audience stuff they very much so already know, but then go ham on it and ham on it. Again, I liked this, and I liked how he was talking about being the beast, roaming the woods, his desire of wanting to be seen again like Dolores was, but then like recapping every single thing that he's done since being Starman. I feel like the audience is intelligent enough to kind of put those pieces of the puzzle together, but it kind of kept going on. It's like, I did this, and then with that character I did this, and then I did that, and I did this. But then we get that moment where he's still talking, he's still burying Pat alive the whole time, and I was thinking like, okay, the dirt all seems to be gone. And that's when the Ultra-Humanite says, you want to hear Jordan's endgame, Pat? And oh yeah, there's no answer, he's buried alive. Now my only issue with this, guys, is that I feel like Pat's gonna be fine. I mean, who knows? I could be wrong. Sometimes I would love to be wrong, even with things that I hope, you know, like, for example, I hope Pat isn't dead. But you would die very quickly through not being able to breathe there. Now, for all I know, guys, the opening of next episode, they could save Pat almost immediately after the Ultra-Humanite did this, with them putting it together with Rick back at the house slowly. And maybe this is too nitpicky for some, but I think by the time they would get there, the oxygen, or the lack of oxygen rather, to his brain would most certainly have matched, as with what the Ultra-Humanite said with Sylvester's. Yeah, long gone by the time they get there. But Pat's probably going to be good, and, you know, no matter what, I really enjoyed this episode. I feel like what they've done is, especially just looking at this season overall, even though this isn't a finale review, so I'll save this mainly until then, they've cooked up like something that I think has been, you know, kind of lacking in a lot of shows that try to do the same thing, especially in the superhero genre. I feel like, you know, if we've ever seen this before in The Flash, where they try and do mystery things here and there, don't get me wrong, it was cool back in the day with Jay Garrick and Zoom and stuff like that, even though there was a lot of theories back then. But with this, they have subverted a lot of people's expectations. Don't get me wrong, they're not absolutely mind-blowing, oh my god, but it's like good storytelling. I was like, oh crap, Dr. Rito is around, as fans kind of suspected, but he's the one in the gorilla's body. Oh, Starman, even though he's acting different, it is the Ultra-Humanite. And I feel like we had the pieces of the puzzle there. Like, we knew that Dolores Winters was really the Ultra-Humanite, won an acting award, but we didn't put together that he could still be Starman, even though we did have our suspicions there. Now, maybe some of you more than others might respond in the comments saying, nah, I knew right to the end that something was going to be done like this. Fair enough, but I do feel like what they've done is not reveal all of their cards. They kind of like gave you a little peek, but then it led you to some other card, and then they actually reveal this card. Do you know what I mean? And I felt like they did that in a very good way. And one thing I am happy to say is that but as this is the end of Stargirl, what a season to end off with in terms of where things are going. And now we're leading up to truly the big boss battle of the game, so to speak. So let me know your thoughts on this episode. What were your thoughts with regards to these reveals, Dr. Rito being in the gorilla body? How do you think Cindy is going to avoid being Dragon Queen, if you will? Do you think Pat's going to die? Obviously not, but should he really, with the lack of oxygen? I mean, he's under there. Arguably, by the time Sylvester's walking away, he should probably be dead. What do you think about the staff connecting with the Ultra-Humanite? Do you agree with me that they've always made it out to be kind of a deeper connection? But if that's the case, then surely that would link to the person under the noggin, and that's the brain, but it didn't. I felt like I do stand by my criticisms there. And just everything else, of course. What are your theories for the finale? Can't wait to read everything you guys say. If you got this far in the video, would really appreciate a like. Thanks so much for supporting the channel. Thanks so much for clicking on today's video, and I just hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day. Looking forward to that finale, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.